Cool. Well, yeah, so again, we hope to see many of you next Wednesday for our project night, which is awesome. If you want to mentor, please do talk to Simeon. But basically, it's just we have space for about 150 people there, and just come and you will have tutorials and chances to work on your projects. I'm trying to get some of the people from Code for America. They have the SF Brigade every Wednesday night. It's like across the street. I'm going to try to get them to come over to pitch some of their projects. They're just like volunteer writing code for San Francisco. It's really cool, a map for like stolen bicycles, all kinds of stuff. Also, if you're interested in like working in government or like part of the federal government, healthcare.gov, VA, talk to me. I'm organizing an event around that to get you to like talk to some of the people in DC that are doing that, and it's really cool. So I guess that concludes our announcements for tonight. We are thrilled that Matt Makai came in from DC for us. He's a developer evangelist at Twilio and works on a lot of really cool, crazy stuff in the community. So please put your hands together for Matt.
Thank you, Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Makai, and I'm a developer evangelist with Twilio. And as Hi said, I'm in from Washington, D.C. So I'm very excited to be out in San Francisco to kick off the year. This talk here, this is a new talk that I came up with, which has this title, which is Python Web Apps with WebSockets and G-Event. The alternate title is WebSockets for Python developers that don't really want to learn Node.js. So that's essentially what we're going to do tonight. Because I procrastinated for so long. I just kept thinking, oh, I want to use WebSockets for that cool chat application, but I really just don't want to learn Node.js just yet. So then I started to look into G-Event and some of the libraries that we'll be using tonight, and I found this was actually not too difficult with Python. Just so I can gauge the audience, show of hands, how many people have used WebSockets at all before? And then just keep your hands up. Okay, so a good chunk, probably maybe about half or so. And how many, keep your hands up, how many people have used WebSockets just with Python? Okay, all right, just with Python. So, okay, so less people that have used with Python alone. Okay, well, so this is gonna be a good talk if you just want to get an introduction to how to use WebSockets with G-Event. It's really what I was going for here. And the reason why I procrastinated on this for so long, other than the fact that I didn't really feel like learning Node, was because I'm sort of in this land of Python web development where I've learned web server gateway interface. I've learned a certain way of programming Python web applications. And I just kept building them. I kept doing CRUD apps and kept doing that over and over again. And I never really thought about features that I could potentially add to my application if I had something like WebSockets, which could provide a different mechanism for communication between client and server. And I mean, this makes sense. Most of us have grown up along with the web. And when the web was originally started, we had something very, very simple like this. We've got a web browser, and it's requesting from the web server, hey, give me index.html. Web server says, sure, here's the file index.html. Cool, give me an image file. Here's the image file. Then along came CSS, give me CSS. Sure, here's the CSS file. Okay, now we're Python web developers, so oftentimes we'll just use the web server like a proxy server. So give me index.html. Well, that's going to be passed on to our WSGI server, and the WSGI server will do Python, generate that HTML page or that JSON payload for us, and pass that back to the web browser. So this worked really well for a while. Many of us probably used mod Python to start before mod WSGI was a thing, or Green Unicorn was a thing, before WSGI became something that was an accepted PEP standard in the Python community. But over time, our applications became richer and richer. So then we had asynchronous JavaScript and XML, AJAX. And we started saying, well, could we build a chat app? Because like we've got all this, like, we've got our HTML, and let's build a chat application. What does that look like? All right, well, and so we get, give me the HTML, give me the CSS, and, all right, do I have any messages? So the web browser goes to the web server. Do I have any messages? Web server is just a proxy. It's going to hit the Cgi server. The Cgi server says, I'll check the database. Nope, no new messages. Send that one back. Goes back to the web browser. Second later, web browser says, I have any new messages? And over and over and over again. So we can kind of do that with like one web browser, right? But when we're talking about the very bottom here, tens of thousands of web browsers, millions of web browsers, however many you have, we need a totally different way, a totally different mechanism to communicate between the web browser and the server. So here we are in our Python world, and we've been building these Cgi applications. Now what I want to introduce is this idea of asynchronous networking. So we have a way of processing in a different way that normally is associated with sort of the node community, probably one of the most popular ways of handling this type of event-driven or evented networking. But this is also possible in Python. And this can completely change the mess that we have here into something that is more sustainable, more reliable, probably more scalable. More scalable would probably be the best word for us to use here. We can change this from here, using long polling via AJAX, to something a little cleaner. We go get the web page, we establish our WebSocket connection, and then now we've established a WebSocket connection with full duplex communications. So the server, with the web server acting as a proxy, can push out messages to the browser. And because it's full duplex, there's some other technologies we could be using to just do server push. But because this is WebSockets is full duplex, the web browser can also pass messages via WebSockets to the server. So now we have a completely different mechanism other than HTTP in order to pass our messages back and forth. And this is a much more sustainable situation, particularly as we're scaling up to use WebSockets. Okay, so we've introduced this sort of like different world. There is some overlap here. Certainly the best part about this is we can leverage Python in order to build these WebSocket-based applications. And we're generally setting up those connections with our traditional web applications. So there's some technologies we can use in this bucket. Now, I don't mean to lump these all together from the standpoint of a level of abstraction. They are at a very different level of abstraction. So Async I, which is in Python 3.4, is a much lower level library than, for example, building on Twisted or Tornado. Gevent is the interesting one that we're going to use tonight. And what this is doing is we are going to patch underlying libraries within our standard library in Python. And this is going to enable a different type of networking. And we'll be able to implement WebSockets. So did my best to kind of set this up. I don't really think talking is the best way to show it. I'd rather just show it by building out an application right now. So I think the best way to do this is just to SSH into a server. So why don't I try to bring this up? I want to make sure that people can read it. I think for people in the front, are there people in the back? Can everyone see? Can I just kind of get a thumbs up if you can read it? Okay. If not, like just thumbs down. I can make it a little larger, but it kind of cuts off at the end of the line. All right. So I've SSH'd into my machine. I just did a host name for sfpi.mattmakai.com. In fact, that's my next slide. And we're going to be using this in a second. So if you have your phones ready with your internet connection or your Wi-Fi connection, we're going to go to this in a second. If we go to this right now, we're just going to get a 502 bad gateway. So this is right now what I've set up on this virtual private server is just Nginx as a proxy to our Cgi server. So the Cgi server is not running. We haven't written any code yet. So we're just getting a bad gateway because it's looking up the port and saying nothing's there. All right, so I've logged in. Just going to make sure I'm in Bash. And I already went ahead and installed the dependencies that we need. And there's actually very, very few of them that we need. So I'm going to activate my virtual environment. And I'm going to go into sfpi. So I've installed these dependencies, but there's only 3 that we need here. First one is Flask. And the second one, we'll just say the second one is Redis. And the third one is really where all the heavy lifting gets done. Python developer Miguel Grinberg, for those of you who have been to PyCon, Miguel wrote this library. It is fantastic, especially as what I intended this talk to be, as an introduction to doing WebSockets with Python. So let's say we did a pip install, we get our libraries, now we're ready to go. All right, what I want to do here is make sure that everyone can see this at the top. So I'm going to try to make this full screen here. All right, let's start building out our application. We've got our installed dependencies, and we're going to create app.py. So we need a few things here. We're going to import Redis, because we're actually going to use Redis as our temporary storage. We're going to import the Flask dependencies. We only need 2 of them here, Flask and render template. And we're going to set up our app. So app will just be Flask. And now, just as a show of hands, how many people in here have used Flask for web development before? OK, so I started with Django. I've been using Django for a long time. I love the framework. I find that from a demo purpose, or just to build something simple, Flask tends to work a lot better. But the idea here is you can do a lot of similar things, not with Flask-SocketIO, but you can do some very similar things with any Python web framework. So I don't want you to think this is just particular to Flask. All right, so we've set up our app, and we're going to set up our database. So our database is just going to be Redis. We're going to just say strict Redis, and this will be on localhost. The port that this is running on, I already have this up and running, a Redis server, is 6379. We'll just connect to the first database. So we're going to write a route, app route. We'll just do the main route, and we'll just say def main return render template. We'll just say main.html. And actually, I want to do one other thing here beforehand. I'm going to have a counter. So anytime anyone accesses this, and you'll see why in a second, I want to just say db.increment counter. And we'll pass that counter along to our front end when we render that template as a variable. We just need a couple other things here just to get this thing going. If name is equal to main, we're going to run this from the command line, so we just need to set this boilerplate up. App.run, and we'll just set debug equals to true just in case I fat finger something here. All right, so we have an empty directory with one file in it that we just created, and we're going to create a directory for templates so we can serve up that template. We've called that main.html, and this is going to be old school HTML. We're just going to do HTML head with a title, SF Python. You came out tonight to watch me write HTML. That's what you're thinking right now. I'm terribly sorry. This is going to be real quick. All right, just setting this up, this scaffolding will end the HTML. And then what we want to do here is we'll say, welcome to the World Wide Web of 1995. And close the H1 tag. And for good measure, we'll throw in a break tag. I still use them. Probably should not let you know that. All right, so we're going to insert our counter here. Visitors have seen this page. We are going old school. We'll save this. And now we'll see how I did. So we're going to run this. And now, oh, wow, we've already got people requesting this. So, all right, 16, 24. Look at this. Blowing up the interwebs right now. OK, getting some good traffic. Our website is starting to take off. Really take off. All right. OK. But I'm kind of annoyed with this little application, because I actually have to hit refresh to realize that I've suddenly hit more visitors than any website that I've written last year. Wow. OK, I'm really glad. I'm also really glad I put this on a server. So I'm going to kill this. Sorry for you who are still trying to get onto it. All right. So that was the first part of the demo, just getting the scaffolding up and running. And it seems like we had a little bit of fun with that. Now we're actually going to do what we came here to do, which is not write HTML from 1995. We're going to set up WebSockets. And we're going to change this around. So instead of having a counter for all the people who visited, let's have a counter for all the people who are currently looking at the page. So all those people who are hitting their refresh, you know what? We're canceling you out. You only have one vote. All right. So from gevent, import monkey. And what we're doing here is we're using gevent to patch the underlying Python libraries. Monkey.patch all. OK, so now we've patched these underlying libraries, and we need to import just a few other dependencies from flask.ext, socketio, import socketio. And this is really where, as I said, Miguel did the heavy lifting here, did a fantastic job with this library. And I will say, if anyone is, I hope many people here are going to PyCon. Miguel's, again, giving a talk at PyCon, always worth attending that session. OK, so setting up socketio, we're going to wrap our application in that socketio. And instead of just running the app directly, we're going to run socketio with our app. OK, so we need to add a few more things here. I'm going to actually switch this around. Instead of having a counter here, we're just going to completely remove that. And we're just going to return back our main page, which I will just modify just a little bit. So we're going to do a socketio on connect, and with a namespace of sfpi /sfpi, and we're going to define wsconnect. And what we'll say here is just we're going to increment a counter, so db.increment, we're just going to set that to a variable. Increment a counter for, say, like the user count, because we just want to have a counter for the number of users that are currently connected via a WebSocket onto our page. OK, and then we will send a message. So we'll emit a message to all of the browsers that are connected at that time. And emitting the message is going to just be, we'll just say that's message, and the payload here will be, we'll just call this, count. So this is count. And then the result of that is going to be what is returned back from incrementing Redis, a counter in Redis. And we just need to have a namespace for this as our last thing here, sfpi, and we'll close that off. All right, so we have a connect. So now we're going to write the code on the HTML to connect to this, but we do also want to have code so upon disconnect, we want to decrement, because otherwise it's pretty much the same thing that we had before. So here we're going to copy these 4 lines, socketio on disconnect. We're going to change this, I'll change the function name, and then we're going to decrement user count. Otherwise, things stay the same. We connect via a WebSocket that is set up on our HTML page, which we're going to write in a second. It'll increment the counter. You refresh the page, you leave that page, decrement the counter. Unfortunately, Redis, very fast. It'll keep up with as many people we have in this room and much greater. All right, so we'll go ahead and save this. And we're going to go back into templates. And once we get this template written, then we'll be able to test this again with the crowd. So I want to save you a little bit from writing a whole lot more HTML. So what I'm going to do is just for the scripts, I'll explain the scripts, but I want to switch over, and I'm going to go into, all of this here, if you're taking notes or anything like that, don't worry about it. I have an open source GitHub repo with actually tags. I know it's a little bit small here. Tags for every single step in this demo. So a blank tag, our 1995 web page, and now what we're creating with tutorial step 3. So you'll be able to get this afterwards. I will have, I'll give you all links so you can get this. And I actually, I wrote a blog post as well with all of my favorite resources from learning WebSockets, both WebSockets independently and WebSockets with Python. So I'll give that all out at the end. So don't worry about having to know exactly what each line of code is, because you'll be able to get it. All right, so I'm going to copy these 2 scripts. One of them is just jQuery. And then the other one is we're going to have just on a CDN serving up this socketio library, which is going to allow us to, it has the underlying code so that we can establish this WebSocket connection. OK, and then the other thing we have here is I just have a pretty standard jQuery document ready. All right. So let's, I'm just going to set paste here so that I don't have some weird indenting. And then we're going to put this script forward. OK, so again, pretty standard jQuery. And this is just going to allow me to manipulate some elements on the DOM. socketio, script with document ready. And then we're just setting up our URL for the WebSocket, which we are exposing via Flask. Setting up our socket on this line, var socket io connect to the URL. And then when we receive a message, so we're emitting these messages, when we receive that, we could have many things. We could have message, message to, or we could, what you'll see later is we'll have something else. And we're going to update user count. We're going to grab the element for user count by its ID and update the count with what's in the payload, which is the message count. OK, so we just need to update the page here. So instead of having this, what we'll have is an H2. And we'll say 0 users are currently viewing this page, right? So, well, that won't change. So what we need to do is have some way to grab this element on the DOM. And we'll do a span ID is equal to user count. And that should do it. We should be able to close this one off. And so what's going to happen here is our JavaScript is going to grab user count, which we set up there by its ID, and it's going to replace the HTML inside of that with our actual count that we're getting from the server. So, completely possible that I fat-fingered something, but we'll just give this one a try real quick. All right, now let's see what happens when we bring it up in the browser. We have 0 users. All right, currently, you see the count incrementing. So as people are looking at this on their phones, if you're trying to refresh the page, what's happening is you're leaving, so it's decrementing the counter. And so now we just have, there's a couple things we have that are nice about this. One, we have an accurate count of the number of users. So it's kind of reminds me of Google Analytics when we're looking at how many people are on your website right now. In fact, I'm actually not sure how they're sending that, but it's possible they are doing some sort of a WebSocket connection. I don't actually know what's behind that, but it's possible you could do the same thing just with your own custom code. So we've got enough people on their phones here. We've got 80. We're going above 90. OK. So this is, OK, above 100. Getting a bunch of people on their phones. All right. Awesome. So this simple example, we've got one more thing after this. But if you have been procrastinating on working with WebSockets in Python, I think this shows, just this alone, without the next example, this is pretty cool stuff. I mean, we're barring, this absolutely horrendous design, although it is, I will admit, timeless. There's a timeless design we have here. This is kind of interesting. This is not something that I typically, well, at least as a few years ago, did with my, standard CRUD applications. This is nice, and this, tell you what, managers really like this. They think this is just really hot. All right. So we're going to do one more step in this, and then I will wrap this demo up. All right, so I've killed the connection. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so we're going to do one more thing. So I'm in from Washington, D.C. One of my colleagues is here from Chicago. Raise your wave, Greg. Greg is in from Chicago. Our team is in from all over London and New York. And what I want to know is, I want to poll the audience via some more code. And I want to know if we can roll up a list of all of the Python meetups from around the world, different cities that we've gone to. So I go to quite a few DC Python meetups. I've been to Memphis and Omaha. I've been to a bunch of different places. I'm really curious to see what the laundry list of all these different places, if folks have been to different Python meetups around the world. So that's what we're going to write in this third part. OK, so what we need to do here in order to get this set up is just modify this just a little bit. Just a little bit more code here. All right, so we've got a connection. We've got a disconnection. We don't really actually care about that in this case. In fact, what we're sort of building here is almost going to be like a chat application. So we're not going to really worry about, again, connections or disconnections or anything like that. I guess we can keep that in there just because shouldn't mess anything up. So we want to do something else though. We want to do on a different thing. So we'll just call this city. When we receive from the browser something called city, we're going to tear this thing apart, and then we're going to pass it back out. So what's going to happen here is namespace is equal to sfpy def web server, say, city. We'll just say this is a message. We're getting something in. So what's going to happen with this function here is the web browser itself is going to emit a WebSocket message, and we're going to receive that on the server. Now, we're not going to have it, it's not going to go from browser to browser. Doesn't work like that. What it is going to do is it's going to go from your browser to the server. The server is going to process it. It's going to send it back out the rest of our browsers. Okay, so the way that we can handle this, and we're actually just going to cut Redis out of the loop here. We're going to just say this is a transient application. We're going to do a socket.io emit, and instead of message, we'll just say city, and then we'll say, again, city, and then we'll have a message of the city that we bring in. So we need to make sure that the front and the back end are sending the same name. And then we just need to close this off and say, oops, all right, namespace is equal to sfpi. Okay, so we've saved that. And then I think that should be all this, this back-end code that we need to write. Save that, and we'll go to templates. Now, we can't use the same template. Actually, it did remind me there's one more thing on the back end we need to write. But first what we'll do is here, we'll copy this over. We'll call this Pi Meetups. So we're going to do a different application. It'll be pimeetups.html. And we'll just go back into our server-side code real quick. And I'm actually just going to, normally you wouldn't necessarily do this. This isn't really like following the derive principles or anything. But we'll just do Pi Meetups. And we'll just say, OK, we'll just grab this pimeetups.html and change the definition here. Pi Meetups. OK, we've saved that. Now we should obviously just, what this will do is look for pimeetups.html, serve that up. So what we need is when it comes up in the browser, we need Pi Meetups to have code that will allow us to input a city. And then we'll receive that on the server side, and we'll pass back out the list of cities. So instead of having, welcome to the World Wide Web of 1995, I think we've kind of moved on from that at this point. We'll say, cities. Actually, we'll just say, enter a city that you've attended a Python meetup. And what we need here is actually a form. So we're gonna check if the form has been submitted, just like a standard input. But we're not gonna have it actually submit the form. We'll have a form, and we'll just say action is equal to whatever. But we need an ID on this, so we'll say cities form. We'll close the form out, and I'm just gonna kill these other couple lines. Okay, so now we have what will be rendered is enter a city that you've attended a Python meetup. There will be a form that is listed there, and we need a couple of inputs in order to get something in there. So input type is equal to text, and an ID equal to city. And we're just going to close off that input and close off and have one more input, which will be type is equal to submit, and close that one off. Okay, so what we have here is a form. So we've pretty much written all the HTML that we're gonna need for inputting. But we need one other thing, which is going to be our list of cities, list of Python meetups. And really what we need here is just a div that will allow us to list out, as people are submitting them, different cities that we've gone to Python meetups. So the div, we'll just call this cities list, close the div. All right, we've written all that HTML. That's all we need. And we just need to modify the WebSockets, and then we're going to give this a whirl. OK, so instead of on message, what we're going to do here is well, let's see. So we're going to have to pass this back out on a city. We're going to change this one around. So what we need here is what we're going to modify this to do is this line here before is going to update the user count. But now what we want it to do is update that list of cities. So instead of user count, we're going to say cities list. And then HTML, instead of replacing all the HTML, we're just going to prepend with the message .city that we've seen. There's one other thing I just realized I'm going to do on the server side, and I'll explain that in a minute. We'll just finish this part off. Because for those folks in the room who are more security inclined, we'll very quickly see that executing arbitrary HTML in the browser is probably not the greatest thing in the world. Okay, so we've just suddenly realized, all right, well, we need to make sure that that's escaped. So when it comes in, it's escaped. Otherwise, you can just insert script tags and do whatever you want, basically, if you had the time to do it. Okay, we'll make sure to fix that before we launch this so that everyone's browsers are safe in here. Okay, so now we're grabbing the cities list. We're prepending at the top of the list. So every time we submit a new city, it's going to come in at the top of the list, and then it's just going to start scrolling down. So it's okay if we have duplicates or whatever. We're just going to have a laundry list of the cities that we've been to for Python meetups. We need one more thing to complete this, and that is going to be socket. Let's see. When we submit this form, we actually need it to not submit. We need to grab the city that the user has input, and we're going to send that over the WebSocket connection instead of over HTTP. So the idea here is cities form submit. Instead of submitting it, we're going to write a little function. We could say event, but I think we can just ignore the event. We shouldn't need that. On the submit event, we're going to do three things. The first thing that we're going to do is going to do a socket.emit back to the server. And what we're going to say, I believe we said city here. We're going to submit this from the browser to the server. Emit city, and our payload is going to just be, see here, we have city, and the payload is going to be the city that we've input into this. So the city input, we're just going to grab the value of that. All right. Two other lines we need here. One, let's just clear out, just for the sake of it, we'll clear out the city. So if you've got a few different cities, we'll clear it out for you. So cities input, val, and we'll just set that to nothing, and then we'll just return false here. Cool. I think that's all the HTML we need. Missing a brace? Thank you. Yes. And I'm missing that. Now, it's possible that I need to also set the namespace on this. We'll give this a try without it and see if it blows up. Maybe we can show off some debugging, live debugging. All right, so the one other thing I said we wanted to do here is instead of just importing Flask, we'll import Cgi, and we're just going to escape these messages so that any bad people in here have a little bit harder time hacking our browsers. All right, Cgi Escape. All right, so what's happening here is, again, we have, this is sort of the out. Let's see here. This is receiving on city, but it's also the output. So we're receiving city. We are then emitting the city that was in that message but escaped back to the browsers. All right. Anybody have any concerns at this point? Anything that I've... All right, let's give it a try. See if it works. In practice runs, I've never gotten it right on the first try, but we'll see what happens here. Now, don't go to the main page, go to Pi Meetups. So what we're going to do here is go Pi Meetups. All right. And we'll see what happens. We'll just open up debugging, and I don't see any cities coming in, so I'll just say Memphis. So clearly what's happening here is there's some sort of issue where we're not getting an error, but we are not getting what we want from that perspective. Okay, wow, we're getting some errors here. That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll just put in a little bit of debugging, and then we should be able to get this working, and that will allow us to compile our list. So what we have are two things. We have on input and we have on output. So really the problem comes in on the input. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because we don't have a namespace configured. But let's see what happens with just saying console.log. And then we'll have, actually, we know we're not going to hit that point. So we're going to say console.log, and we're just going to pull up city's input. The value. And if for some reason we debug this a little bit, it just doesn't seem to be working properly, we'll copy over the other code. But I think we should be able to get this straightened out. All right. So just to see like what happens when we Python app.py, the other thing is, all right, go ahead and start hitting that and start submitting. Let's say we just do this. Give it a try. Undefined. OK, so it appears a couple things have happened. We can start looking at a few errors that have occurred. One is just that, OK, it seems like, number one, there's a key error when we're trying to pull it out of message. So we're not getting the city. So the city is actually, it appears, going through in some cases. But also, we seem to have an undefined. So there may be a couple of errors in here. So let's take a look at cities. OK, so cities input value, console.log cities input.val. OK, that seems to be OK in this case. Cities input, let's just make sure that we have it set up. So that's the problem, right? So let's see. Oh, no. OK, so cities input. Well, where is cities input? That's the question. So this is the first problem. Cities input should be our ID. OK, so what this means is we have this city's input, and we weren't getting anything from it. So that's one of the first problems, and that may actually explain both of our errors. So let's give this a try one more time. Whoa, man, you guys are ready. All right. So here we go. I am really glad I escaped that input. I highly doubt Pyongyang. Come on, really? All right. So Washington, D.C., very nice. All right. So what I'm going to need. So what I need you to do is all of the people that are doing a legitimate submission of cities. I will not live code it, but I will write a script to peel out all of the terrible input and all of the hacks that everyone is trying to attack each other's browsers with. And I'll compile that, and I will put a comment on the meetup group with the ones that we have. So I just want to make sure I have mine. I've been to San Diego. This is not secret. Oh, boy. Boy, this degraded really quick. You know, I'm trying. So I learned a lesson. I often do this 5-minute demo for Twilio where people text in and you display on the screen what they're texting in. And I learned at college hackathons, like, all bets are off. Like, I just stopped displaying the input. I didn't realize that. I thought we had such a highbrow crowd here in San Francisco that, I didn't have to really worry about that. But OK, all right. So that's our list of a lot of drop tables and occasionally a city like London. We'll just switch back over real quick to the presentation. And what I need is just one thing. So this is the first time I've given this talk. If everyone could just get out their phones, what I do is I just collect a number between 0 to 10, and just allows me to gauge based on other talks that I give how much I need to improve to get this to a level that I'm hoping for. So if you send a text message to 415-630-6194 with just a number between and a drop tables on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely you'd be to recommend this talk to a colleague or a friend. 0, not likely at all. 10, extremely likely. Just allows me to calculate some sort of, because I'm such a developer, analytical person, I need some sort of number to be able to calculate, was this a decent talk? Was this worth your time? I hope it was. So I will just leave this up here for a second. And again, my name is Matt Makai. I'm developer evangelist at Twilio, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'll put my contact information up. And one other thing about this is, if you want all the code, the resources, I probably should have said this up front, all the resources and the blog post that I wrote, you'll get a text message response with a link. It's a bit.ly link that will first give you the blog post, and then it'll drop your database. So, not the second part. All right, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Matt. And as we discussed before, if you give us the IP addresses of all the people that put the garbage in there,
problem.
we'll
Yes.
connect that with the Meetup check-in app, and we'll exclude them from your next talk.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. Questions, please.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
Yeah. You kind of. Could you talk a little bit about what Gevent actually did and kind of what would have happened if you didn't import and monkey patch Gevent?
Totally, yeah. So I really glazed over a lot of the details. I really just wanted to dive into the live coding. Really, the magic there, a huge part of the magic is with the monkey patching. So when we look at the code, the line that he's specifically referencing is in step 3, where we do this thing in app.py where we say, right here, from Gevent, import monkey patch all. What this is doing is, so monkey patching is replacing the block. Now, this I actually could get this definition wrong. My understanding is that it's replacing what is a lot of the blocking code in the networking libraries and replacing with that is more amenable to doing asynchronous or evented networking, which allows you to run which will allow you to run WebSockets in a way that is not going to take up all of. So this is why I sort of avoided this topic. The way that it normally works is you've got a bunch of workers. They are doing work based on every request. What this does is it's sort of changing the model to what Node does, which is like you've got one worker and it is just like processing requests and not blocking at all. And so that's really where the magic comes in. And I can probably prepare. What I'll do is, so I actually so I write fullstackpython.com and oh wow, thank you. And I will put up. I'm actually building out the WebSockets page. Let me put up for Gevent a much more user-friendly definition that is going to be technically accurate, because I'm probably going to get it wrong at this exact moment. So hopefully that answers the question.
I wanted to go and ask what I'm sure everyone is thinking. Does this work on IE 7?
No, it doesn't. So this is one of the resources, and it's can I use, actually, I think I have the exact link on the WebSockets page on Full Stack Python. There is a can I use handy WebSockets reference chart. And it is very handy. And as of IE 9, it was not supported. So once IE 10 rolled around, it was WebSockets were supported. So IE 7 will not be working. In fact, the one big thing is like, and one of the reasons why I didn't get into this for a while was like Android, which still has a lot of like 2.3 versions out there, does not support WebSockets. So there was like a lot of catching up that needed to happen in order for this to work across mobile devices, which was a real downer. Like even just a couple of years ago, it was a really big problem. So if you're doing anything with building WebSockets in mobile, it was like kind of a non-starter. Yeah.
Hey Matt, what is your preferred way to load balance WebSockets?
Oh boy, I really do not have a good answer to this question, and I'm pretty much not knowledgeable to be able to answer that question. So I bet you whatever answer you have is going to be more appropriate than load balancing WebSockets than I can come up with at the moment.
Have you ever done a load test to see how what your QPS is?
No, I haven't. But thank you for providing a load test tonight, which I was eventing and making sure that it could handle it. No, actually, I have not, and I'm sure there's other people who have done a little bit of that. That actually would make a fantastic blog post, and it's probably, I actually don't know where the bottlenecks will start to come in. It's a good question. Well, thank you all for coming out this evening.
So it's 8:50. We have the space until 9:30 p.m. I think Grace may have a couple words, and then feel free to socialize and enjoy yourselves.
So just one last comment. For upcoming meetups, we are hoping to see if anybody else that is delivering a PyCon talk that might want to practice the talks here. And so I've already contacted people that are residing in the Bay Area to see if they wanted to come and talk. If you know people that are from outside of the Bay Area that would happen to be in the Bay Area that wants to practice the PyCon talk, let me know. You can write me up on meetup.com and you'll find me. So thank you so much, and I hope that we'll see you in future meetups. And please tell your friends to RSVP early, and if you can't show up, please do change your RSVP. It will make it so much easier for the rest of the people that really want to join. Thank you so much, and have a great night.